Okay, in this video episode, I'm going to show you how to do a rotation about the origin of 180 degrees. Our function we're working with is y equals the square root of x. Now, mind you that a rotation of 180 degrees is exactly the same thing as finding negative function negative x. Now, the way we're going to do it is we're going to do it mathematically up here, and we're going to do it visually up here so you can gain more clarity. We have the existing function already drawn up for us right over there. It's y equals the square root of x. There it is across there. We've drawn it, and let's do the first step. The first thing I want to do is reflect it about the x-axis and then about the y-axis. Now you can do it the other way, about the y-axis then the x-axis. It's the same thing. Order is not important. So let's go through this step by step. The first thing we're going to do, let's get reflected about the x-axis. So if we're going to reflect about the x-axis first, the first thing we want to do is swap the y's. So you replace the y's, y for negative y. Why is that? Why do we swap the y's if we reflect about the x-axis? Well, if we're reflecting about the x-axis and we got y equals 5, for example, and we reflect that about the x-axis, then that's going to become negative 5. So you can see the y values swap in their sign. So let's go ahead and do this. To reflect in the, we're going to swap the y for negative y, which means function x, we've got y equals that. So function, we're going to put a negative in front. Negative function x is equal to negative the square root of x. So what do? We put a negative in front of it. So now we put a negative in front of that. So it's negative the square root of x. So if we were to draw this, it would look a mirror image reflected about the x-axis, and it'll come across there. So let's test the point over there. Let's test where this point here is. We've got the point up here, say, right there. That's 4, 2. Then we should come here and find a point for negative 2 right about there. We should have the reflection coming down there, starting at the origin, coming right there. But let's test it. Let's test x equals 4 into there to make sure that we're going to get negative 2. So I'm going to substitute x equals positive 4. Let's put it in there. So that's going to equal, negative the square root of 4, which equals, the square root of 4 is 2, so it's negative 2. Even if it's plus or minus 2, the minus comes in front, so it's minus 2. So yes, 4 comes down to minus 2, which is right about there. So we can draw that curve in there. It starts at the origin, comes across at 1, 1. Because if I substitute 1 in there, square root of 1 is 1, negative 1. So yep, that's going to go down there. So let me just draw that in. There we go. And I'll just put a point there, the mirror image. That is the mirror image across there, reflected about the x-axis. Okay, so that's y. Actually, I'll put it as function. That's negative function x right there, which equals negative the square root of x. There it is there. Okay, now let's take that exact same function and flip it across. Let's mirror it, reflect it into this quadrant right there, which will be our final result, which is a 180-degree rotation. So to do that, we're going to put a negative in the x. So let's go ahead and put a negative in the x. So now, just put a line here. Let's put negative function negative x. And that equals negative the square root of negative x. We're reflecting about the y-axis, so that means we swap the x for negative x. So we're swapping x for negative x, or we're replacing it. So negative function negative x is negative negative x. Okay. So that's going to be in this quadrant. It's going to look like that. So how are we going to confirm the points? Well, I'm going to test the point negative 4. If I put x equals negative 4, let's see if we get, should be about negative 2. I'm going to test it. So at x at x equals negative 4 as a test, substitute it into that, that's going to equal negative the square root of negative 4. Now, you might be thinking, well, you can't get the square root of a negative number. You can if you substitute another negative number, because two negatives make a positive. So, if I substitute a negative 4 under here, because it's already negative, so I didn't actually do it properly. That negative goes there, so I'm substituting negative 4. That's better. That makes more sense. Hope that makes more sense. Now I just fixed it. So if I substitute negative 4, which is this point there, into this function right there, it becomes negative the square root of negative 4. Essentially that means it's negative the square root of negative of positive 4. The square root of positive 4 equals what? Well, it's going to be negative, square root of 4 is 2, negative 2. So that means at negative 4, we should have a y value of negative 2, which is right about there, which makes a lot of sense. So if I'm going to draw that in, it's going to look something like this. Starts at the origin because it's rotating about the origin, so that's the pivot point. So that's going to go through 1, 1, obviously. So we're going to go there we go. So let me just mark that out. I'll just put a point right there just to show it. So there we go. So what is this one here now called? This one is called, that is negative function negative x. So this is negative function negative x, which equals negative the square root of negative x. Negative the square root of negative x. There we go. So let's have a look how that rotated. You can see that it's a rotation of 180 degrees. So it spins all the way across and comes across there. So there's our y equals the square root of x, which is function x. Let me just write that in. That is function x. Then we put a minus in front of it because we swapped the y's. So it's negative function x now, and it reflects in the x-axis. And then we put a minus in the x because we swapped the x's because we're flipping it across the y-axis, and then it reflects across and comes here to negative function negative x, and that equals negative the square root of negative x. And there you go.